Hi, everybody. Let me tell you a new story today. The story is called Sinister, Mountain Road, and Headless Man. Today's story is still true, shared by Zhang Boyang. He shared that Walking Dead story with me too. We'll call him Zhang henceforth. His hometown is located in the western part of Hunan province, in a county under the jurisdiction of Huaihua City, called Mayang Miao Autonomous County. I never know this place. It's very, very far away from here. When John was young, there were no expressways to Mayang County. People traveled by mountain roads. Western Hunan is full of mountains, and it's almost impossible to find flat land. So the mountain roads were winding and very difficult to navigate. Back then, without expressways, many truck drivers were reluctant to travel these mountain roads for several reasons. Number one, the mountain roads had many, many U-turns, and most of the roads were very narrow with no guard bars at that time. Unless you were very experienced, it was easy to have accidents on such roads. Number two, even if you are very careful or very experienced, strange things often happened on these mountain roads at night. The most common stories John heard as a child were about the drivers encountering a group of people blocking the road at night. These people would stand in a row, holding hands to block the road. What was eerie was that they all wore the same color clothes, sometimes blood red, sometimes snow white. Imagine that, everyone. Driving on a dark mountain road at night with no street lights, and suddenly a group of people in white clothes appeared in front of you, holding hands to block your car. What would you feel? Inexperienced drivers would definitely brake, not wanting to hit people. But according to John, experienced drivers would accelerate and rush through. That sounds like a serious traffic accident, right? You would hear screams as you hit them, but when you came back at dawn, no one was dead or injured, but you could see many dead animals' bodies by the roadside. Big mountain rats or raccoon dogs. They are a type of canid, smaller than foxes. But these creatures can cause trouble, so never stop the car. Once you stop, you'll never be able to go home. Number three, road robbers and bullies were also a big problem. This wasn't long ago, just 3 to 4 decades ago. These people could extort money from passing drivers on the roads. There was a U-turn on a mountain road near the county town where John once took a bus. When they arrived at this spot, the driver drove very slowly because there was a group of people nearby who specialized in extortion. They would drive their pets and livestock onto the road. If you were passing the span without paying attention and ran over a chicken, 20 or 30 people would surround your car immediately. Armed with hoes and firewood knives, you couldn't leave. Every animal had a price. Chickens and ducks were 5,000 yuan each. That is $700. And dogs and cats were 30,000 yuan each. It was robbery, but you couldn't speed away, and calling the police was useless. When the police arrived, these people would claim that these were the village's assets, and you couldn't leave without settling the matter. The simplest solution was to pay for peace, and you could only leave after paying. When John was very young, he took a bus with his family, and the driver accidentally ran over a chicken. Suddenly, more than 30 people appeared. In the end, the driver had to apologize and say all sorts of nice things, and he had to pay 2,000 yuan to get past. John witnessed this himself. At that time, the security in China was very, very poor. After the reform and opening up in 1978, until the whole society banned guns, cracked down on various criminal activities, and then severely cracked down on organized crime, along with millions of surveillance cameras across the country. China gradually became safer and safer, eventually becoming one of the safest countries in the world. You can look up some information about the crackdown yourself. It was called Take Severe Measures Against Grave, Illegal, and Criminal Activities. In Chinese, it's called 严打. Yeah, you can check out some information on the internet. Well, let's continue our story. That's how chaotic things were back then. And the cities were rampant with guns. In the 1990s, Mayang County was controlled by three major guns. The area north of the country town bridge was controlled by the upper street gang, led by a boss with the surname Mo. From the bridge to the cinema, about 4 kilometers away, was the middle street gang, led by the boss with the surname Teng. South of the cinema belonged to lower street gang, led by a boss with the surname Li. At that time, China was still very poor, and the county town only had one street, which was controlled by 3 guns. Moreover, these people did not coexist peacefully, but often fought, using guns and knives to fight. Ordinary people did not dare to go out at night. The action of these people caused the public outrage, and later the Mayang County police carried out an overwhelming operation against the gang members who disturbed the social order. Within 24 hours, they arrested 42 trucks full of gang members, totaling more than 800 people. Then these people were handcuffed and strung together with ropes, put on trucks, and paraded through the streets for all to see. They all had wooden signs behind their necks, writing their names and crimes. The common people all went out to watch. And everyone, when I was young, in my hometown, I also witnessed a public trial. Yeah, a trial on the street. At that time, 3 murderers were sentenced to death and executed immediately. Later, they were escorted by the police to the low-lying area south of the county town and executed by a firing squad. Ladies and gentlemen, this was the situation back then. Public trial was to show the government's determination to combat crime and deter criminals. From ancient times until now, the Chinese people have always believed that debts must be repaid, and that those who take lives must pay with their own. That's why we still retain the death penalty. And please, everyone, please, don't talk about how the so-called abolition of the death penalty is civilized, because that's not civilization at all. It doesn't even achieve basic fairness, right? Later, after the trial, those who had killed others were executed by a firing squad, and the others were sent to prison. It is said that the boss of the upper street gang, Mo, fled to the southeast, but was later killed by a local gang and thrown into the sea. The bosses of the middle street gang and the lower street gang were arrested, and later executed along with the gang members who had committed murders. There was a hitman from the lower street gang. His family name is Wang, known as the #1 killer in the little city. He had killed several people and was escaped. And soon, he was killed by his enemies. It was another case. We don't talk about it here. Later, villagers spotted his body near the U-turn we mentioned earlier, between two mountains called Blind Bend. Because of the U-turn, you cannot see the road ahead. That's why it is called this name. For those criminals, their families took their bodies back and quietly buried them in the cemetery because they felt ashamed to have such criminals as their families. After one was escaped and killed, his family was actually quite miserable. His wife was an ordinary housewife who made a living selling fruits, and she had a son who was still in school. One night, one's wife came home late, pushing her fruit cart towards home. There was no street light at that time, but the moon was quite bright. As one's wife was about to get home, she saw a person standing at her doorstep. At that time, rural houses were all single-story houses, and this person was standing under the eaves. The moonlight shone down, just blocked by the eaves, making it impossible to see this person's face, or what clothes he was wearing. The person stood there motionless. One's wife was a bit scared and hurried home. When she arrived at the door, she looked at this person again, but he was still motionless. She was scared and shouted, "Who are you? What are you doing here?" This person did not speak, but walked towards one's wife slowly. She shouted, "Who are you? What do you want?" This person walked up to her. She could hear that he seemed to be wet, with water droplets dripping from his body onto the ground. She continued to shout, "If you don't speak, I'll call for help." At this time, this person had already walked up to her. In the moonlight, she finally saw that it was her husband. She was about to shout, but found that she was too scared to speak. At this time, this person spoke. "Hey, look, I was chopped dozens of times, and my head is about to fall off." After speaking, his head tilted and fell onto his shoulder, and his neck was bloody and messy, with the sound of dripping water, which was actually blood, flowing down. One wife was about to faint from fear. Suddenly, her door opened, and it was her son, who heard his mother shouting and came to see what was going on. Her son saw his mother sitting on the ground, scared to the point of collapse. He came over to help his mother quickly. "What's wrong? Are you okay, ma'am?" The lady said, "Your dead father came back to scare me." Her son was also scared, but looking around, he saw nothing. He helped his mother home, and then he took a flashlight and went out to check. There was still no one, but their house was surrounded by a thin line of blood. The child was terrified, crying and shouting, and many neighbors came, wondering what had happened. Seeing one's wife and son were like crazy people, they asked the situation, and everyone went to check. Sure enough, all of them saw that bloodline, and the blood was not dry yet. One's wife was terrified, crying and laughing alternately. The ambulance came, and the neighbors took her to the hospital, where she stayed for 15 days before she got better. However, she dared not live at home anymore and could only go back to her mother's house. But her clothes and other supplies were at home, so she had to ask her elder brother, younger brother, and a son to go back and get them. The son knew where the things were, and the three young men went back together with the key to pack up. It was summer, 7 p.m., and it was not dark yet. The three men arrived at the door, about to open it. Was trying to unlock the door, when suddenly someone knocked from the inside. They panicked, but one's wife's brother was more shocking, saying, No one has been home these days. Maybe a thief got in. Let's go in and check. After speaking, he opened a door and the three men entered the yard, searched the whole house, but found no one. The three men endured their fear and packed some clothes and daily necessities quickly. In less than 10 minutes, they finished packing. They walked out of the yard quickly, preparing to lock the door and leave. Just as they were locking the door, suddenly they heard someone knocking from inside of the door again. Bang, bang, bang. The same 3 knocks as before. "There's a ghost!" one son shouted, and without even locking the door, the 3 men turned and ran away fast. This incident is known to everybody in Mayang County. When John was a child, he went to see this small house, but did not dare to approach it. It was lifeless and uncomfortable to look at. This may also be a psychological effect. In 2005, these houses were demolished. The land was sold, and later developers turned them into tall buildings. Okay, everybody, this is the end of the story shared by John. And please share what you think of this story and your stories. Thank you, everybody. This is Alex's story time, and I am Alex. I got a lot of good stories to share with you. Thank you so much. See you next time. Bye-bye.